The Super Speedway Podcast is a Dream Bigger media production. For news, photos, show notes, and information about advertising on the podcast, visit www.thesuperspeedway.com.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Super Speedway.
Hey, winning's great anytime, no matter how long there was in between. The motivation's always there, and to have a group of guys like Billy and so many first-time winners on this crew of the 41 car. I remember winning my first race here at Bristol, and we all got special rings. I'm going to get all the guys rings for their first win. It's big. It's a moment, and I've been pushing hard to get those guys to victory lane, and I'm glad I can deliver.
Little Kurt Busch after the Bristol night race this weekend. Welcome to episode 75 of the Super Speedway Podcast, recorded August 22nd, 2018. I'm your host, Eric Young, and I'm joined once again. You're back, James. James Cush on the other end of the line. How's it going, James?
Good, man. I'm just glad that you signed off on my vacation slip and let me go. And then, I was feeling pretty relaxed, and then you had an onslaught of guests, and I was kind of worried that I would never come back.
Yeah.
So here I am. I'm glad I'm back.
You're not going anywhere, man. How was vacation?
Ah, fantastic.
That's
good. It was good.
That's good.
Yep, got the batteries recharged and ready to roll. I listened to the podcast. Actually, I listened to both of the podcasts, so I tried to stay up to date on things that were going on around here.
Nice.
With Cone and Aaron Bearden, and those were fantastic. I hope people go back and listen to those if they haven't had a chance to yet.
It was a good time.
Yeah, it was awesome. You were killing it on the coverage from Michigan again. I was able to keep up on that as well. So all good stuff, man.
It was a good time at Michigan. Learned some stuff out there too, and hope to continue doing it next year. This should be it, I think, for races this year, unless some miracle happens and I can get somewhere else. But I was thinking about doing the ARCA race in Berlin this weekend. It's just not in the cards, though. So
yeah,
I think that's going to be it for me this year. But I plan to do it again next year. So
right on.
Lots of good stuff coming. So we had the Bristol Pro Shop, the Bass Pro Shops NRA night race this weekend at Bristol Motor Speedway. Cup Series got 500 laps in despite some weather. Started an hour early, which I think was an excellent decision by NASCAR, considering it was pouring after the race. And Kurt Busch gets the win. I got a lot of Bushes in my notes here, but Kurt's the first one this week. So, man, I mean, just first of all, I guess I don't know where to start with this. I have an order in the show notes, but the order is not the one I want to go with. It's because the whole race just, I mean, James, I don't know how much I know you were on vacation, so I don't know how much you got to focus on the race.
Yep, I got back.
Okay, perfect. So it just seemed like every segment of the race was a different person challenging. And I didn't know until the end, even at the end, whether Larson was going to be able to chase him down or not. There was not a point in the race where I really knew who was going to win the race. What did you think on that?
Yeah, it was just a wild Bristol, and I thought there were like three guys that really stood out. And if you look at the laps led chart for the race, you'll understand why. I thought late it was going to be Boyer. I thought, Clem Boyer's going to sneak up and get a third win here. There was a while where I thought it was going to be Blaney, and then he got into the wall late. And then Chase Elliott was just consistent. So those were like your three guys. And then all of a sudden, towards the end of the race, there's Larson, who'd been kind of stalking all night. And then, Kurt Busch, had kind of things fall his way, didn't pit a couple of times and got the track position, and off he went. It was fantastic.
Right. Yeah, I mean, just all around, I mean, there wasn't much to complain about. And I know
side-by-side racing was good.
Yeah, Jeff Gluck does his Twitter poll or whatever, the unscientific poll of was it a good race, and this one set a new record. I think it was over 95% or 98% or something like that.
Yep, I think it was 90. I think it was 95 on the nose.
Yeah, I think so, because Chicago was like 94, and that was the old record.
Yeah,
I think.
Chicago was up there, and Watkins Glen was really high too.
Yep. Really high.
Yep, so they're all plus 90. I think they're all above 92. All three of those races, and in a handful of races, all for NBC. So good for those guys.
Yeah,
too.
I mean, but things are doomed in NASCAR, so.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's all gloom and doom.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that maybe a little bit later. I do have some thoughts on the crowd, but we don't have to talk about that. We don't have to talk about that right now. We got good things to talk about.
Right. So first of all, I think what probably made this race exciting was the same thing that made the race exciting the night before for the Xfinity Series, and that was Kyle Busch having trouble. So Kyle spins on, I have in the notes lap 1, but it was lap 2. and spins on his own. Basically, got into it with Blaney a little bit, spun out in front of the field, and gets clobbered a couple times, and has to battle his way back through the field. He's 3 laps down. I thought he was done. The way the front wheel looked, it looked like he was out. And but no, good to go, and they get the car repaired, and comes back from 3 laps down to lead the race, and probably be the favorite to win the race had it not been for fueling problems that put him back in the pack and caused contact to take him out of it. But I mean, I know we've talked plenty about Kyle and his ability here and everything on this podcast, but it's just another example of what that guy can do.
I just thought it was more Rowdy Stenhouse out there.
Yeah.
Just, involved in no, I'm just kidding. I know he was involved in 3 accidents. He knocked the 78 out and a couple others, but that's neither here nor there. That car was trash.
Right.
And he did some amazing things with it until late. But he was there. I mean, he was a contender, for God's sakes, which is just ridiculous. If you take a look at that race car, it was everything but a modified, honestly. It was all beat to heck. I mean, how often do you see in NASCAR anymore a car that looks like that that's competitive?
Yeah, it was destroyed on lap 2, that's for sure.
Yeah, two guys. Kyle always amazes me with his driving ability. But Kyle Larson really, I just feel like Larson doesn't have the car to compete with the SHR guys up
Right.
there, and time again he's muscled his way to a whole bunch of second places this year. And those 2 guys really stood out to me, and Chase Elliott, But yeah, just 3 amazing drives, but none more amazing than Kyle.
Yeah, you remind me I don't have the results pulled up here. Let me pull those up here real quick so I'm ready. I've just got all my links pulled up for the episode and none of the results.
Yeah.
All right, just took a second to shut the air off here in the room to try and make it a little less noisy. I don't know how much you guys can hear it, but it's driving me crazy. So, yeah, let's take a look at who performed well. I mean, with the final results, it's kind of interesting to look up front. Joey Logano comes home with a good finish on Saturday, so good for him to get back up
led
there.
a lot of laps too.
Yeah,
Yep.
You mentioned Chase Elliott gets a 3rd place. He was in the running for a while too. I mean, 112 laps led on the day, so one of the top guys of the day, and able to battle back. I mean, I think he had a bad spot on the restart. I think at the end, wasn't it the last restart he was on the inside? And
Everybody wanted to be on the outside.
Yeah.
Everybody was, and you could tell every time there was a restart, that inside lane just didn't get going. And I don't know if it was, what was causing the issue other than, grip or whatever. But
right.
The outside line at Bristol is definitely preferred.
Eric Jones gets a strong top 5 finish, finishes 5th. Clint Boyer was another one that was strong, led 120 laps. Ryan Blaney led 121. I mean, just look at the laps led.
Yeah, 4 guys really stand out.
Yeah, and those aren't the guys that won,
Yeah, I know.
So,
and they weren't the guys we were thinking about at the end, other than Boyer. I think we probably were considering Boyer there towards the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, he just didn't get the restart. And
Boyer had that inside front row, and just that was it for him.
Couldn't hang with Kurt. Yep.
You had to, if you were going to start on the inside, you had to get to the pedal quick. You had to be almost to the pedal before the leader to get it done. So, so interesting mix. AJ Allmendinger, Bubba Wallace both have trouble right at the beginning. They were in the Kyle Busch crash. Ended their day on lap 2. That's got to be a bummer. At least.
Oh yeah, when you got when you've got 495 laps to
at
run.
least they started an hour earlier so they could get out of there a little quicker and.
Poor Bubba. I mean, that car, and Bubba was looking forward to that track.
Oh yeah, definitely. He ran well there in the spring.
Yep.
Paul Menard has some trouble. Finished 36th. I know that you'll be very disappointed about that.
He just had a birthday, I think.
Yeah.
And I think it was this week, and I don't think he smiled.
Martin Truex Jr. Let's talk about him. Ran well. Ran well during the day for the most part. Was ticking along up front. Didn't lead any laps, but he was in the running. And then Kyle Busch cleaned him out, man.
Yeah, he did. Well, Kyle said he missed by 6 inches coming up the track and just hooked him. And then who was in the 7? JJ Yaley came through, and geez, oh man, that was a big wreck. Not as
Yeah.
big of a wreck as you can get at Bristol, I think, without cars going in the air or whatever. But that was a hard crash.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. Truex had every right in the world to be really ticked off at Kyle Busch, but
Well,
didn't seem to
Sherry
be.
Pollux was
Yeah.
Sherry Pollux was mad on Twitter. That's
Yeah, Sherry had some comments, but Truex stayed pretty calm. I mean, he was upset
Well-
about the accident, I think, but not.
There's a GIF of Truex going around when he parks the car, and
Uh-huh.
first he yells at Cole Pearn that he's not driving it to the garage, and says you drive it, and then throws the steering wheel, and then he gets out of the the GIF is Truex gets out of the car, decides to kick the quarter panel, just like Days of Thunder, and then gets about 7 steps away from the car and realizes, oh crap, I forgot my hat, and then turns around and puts his hat. It's quite the sequence if you go and look that one up. It's pretty funny. I had me laughing pretty good when I saw that one.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be frustrated too, but then to have the wherewithal to go back for the hat
Right.
to make sure he got his sponsor plugged.
Yeah, was it the sponsor plug, or did he just have messy hair?
Well, that too.
It doesn't matter if you have messy hair when you win the race. 'Cause
Kurt
wasn't too worried about it, but
Yeah, he definitely had. My favorite was the Kurt Busch pictures side by side with Chris Farley in Tom hair.
nice.
That was good.
I saw a couple comparison photos. I didn't see that one. Speaking of GIFs of the weekend, can we talk about GIFs of the Bristol weekend without
Gifts
the
and
Kyle?
GIFs?
Yeah,
Gifs
well,
and GIFs?
yeah. To me, it's GIFs, but I'm saying GIFs because the guy who created them says it's GIF. Anyway, you can't talk about it without Kyle Busch's GIF from
He
Friday.
had 2 of them. He had 2 of them too. I tell you what, NASCAR Twitter was on its game
Yeah.
this weekend. We got some really high quality stuff through NASCAR Twitter with Kyle Busch and his little thumbs up, and then he had his post race interview where he kind of did the face. So good stuff all around from Kyle.
Yeah. I'm sure that Nick Bromberg still found a way to complain about their GIFs. though. Sure.
Yeah.
There's the first one.
I'm sure he did.
There's number one. All right. So I don't know if you saw Kyle's introduction at Bristol. The drivers get to introduce themselves during the driver intros. Kyle's was, I don't need no introduction. Heads off.
good.
I thought it was pretty good. I like
Well,
him.
he introduced himself on lap 1.
Yeah, I like him playing the heel role. I really, really do. I like when he embraces it. There's plenty of times when he doesn't. I really thought it was interesting to watch, on lap 2, all the fans stand up and cheer for Kyle Busch wrecking. And then at the end of the race, all the fans cheering for Kurt for winning. Like, when did Kurt become the good Busch? When did that happen?
That was a long road.
Holy
That was
cow.
Well, Kurt's in the old man club now.
Yeah, that's true.
And
You can't boo an old man.
Yeah, once drivers hit the old man club, you can't boo them anymore.
Yeah, Jimmy
Someday
doesn't get
Kyle-
booed anymore.
Well, yeah, exactly. Someday Kyle Busch and Brad Keselowski are going to get in the old man
There's
club.
no way.
I think so.
I don't
when
think so.
Kyle Busch is when Kyle Busch is the last one standing, you'll have no choice.
Yeah.
Kyle Busch haters.
I'll believe it when I see it, although Darrell Waltrip got cheers eventually, too. So
Hey, Jeff Gordon got cheered eventually, and you're seeing Jimmy Johnson get cheered now. And I never
Right.
thought we'd see Jimmy Johnson get cheered. When Jimmy Johnson wins his next race, it's going to be loud.
yeah.
People are going to be excited.
They're going to tear the place down.
Yeah, people are going to be excited.
Yeah.
Because for whatever reason, fans have to go back. They
Right.
always have to go back. And Johnson, he'll get his at some point.
Well, you
People are
mentioned that. I mean, he was up there at Bristol.
Yeah, he was banging fenders, getting yelled at
He
by.
finished in top 10, got a 9th place finish.
Who was ticked off at him late in the race?
I don't
was
remember.
that?
Somebody was mad.
Gosh, was it Chris Buescher? Chris Buescher.
Yeah, I think so.
He squeezed Chris Buescher, and Chris was not happy. There was a lot of bad tempers.
Right. That was the Kyle Busch cut down tire thing too, wasn't it? Wasn't
Yeah,
all
I
that
think
same
so.
sequence?
Yep.
Because I think it was Buescher that got into Kyle.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm looking at the 37 and 18 on lap 483.
There you
was
go.
the call. So late in the race. But you brought up a good point. I think maybe we should transition to it really quick.
Yeah.
Kyle Busch playing the heel,
Mm-hmm.
and what comes with that. You've got it in our notes, a little
Yes.
bit of fan altercation. I thought that was a good segue to just talk about that really quick.
Yeah, let's talk about it a little bit. Kyle has a run-in with a fan after the race there at Bristol. I won't play the audio here because most of it's bleeped out. But Bristol Motors,
Family-friendly podcast.
Bristol. Well, we were family friendly until the orange cone was on, but that's all
Cone
right.
was on. Yeah, Cone was on, and we had to put the little E next to our podcast.
Yeah, got to be careful with him. So Bristol Motor Speedway responded. First of all, I guess what happened is essentially Kyle was coming off the track on a golf cart, and I think he was signing autographs, or they were going by. There's a full video which we have in the show notes if you want to check it out. But fans were hollering stuff and whatever, and apparently one of the fans made contact with Kyle, and he's on the back of the golf cart, and he immediately jumps off and gets in the guy's face. Well, they end up making contact again. I think the guy pushes him or something, and Kyle gets back in his face, and then security comes in and breaks him up. And Kyle hops back on the golf cart, and they head off. So Bristol Motor Speedway issues this statement. Our security team has investigated a post-race incident where a guest repeatedly confronted Kyle Busch verbally and physically while he was signing autographs for fans. As Busch then prepared to leave in his golf cart, the individual struck the driver across the chest, and at that time, Busch confronted the individual. The two were separated quickly, and a uniformed officer pulled the individual to the side, allowing Busch to depart. So let's talk about this a little bit. We've seen a couple instances in recent memory. The fan after Denny Hamlin last year at Martinsville. I mean, is there much to talk about, or is it just fans need to remember that they're not part of this?
It's not. Yeah. Well,
it's one thing to holler something.
Yes.
It's another thing to put your hands or try to put your hands on somebody.
I think as a fan, there are rules to being a fan.
Right.
Just because you pay money to have access and to go to these events doesn't give you a right to, one, I don't think any fan should be screaming any sort of obscenities, swear words, racial slurs, whatever.
Right.
You have no right to do that, one. And two is physical. You should never, ever, ever touch an athlete, whether they're on the track, on the court, coming off the field, wherever, whatever. You have no right to touch another human being just because you paid money to be in that building.
Right.
It ain't right. And with Bristol Motor Speedway, I hate to have one fan ruin it for everybody, but maybe we need to be a little bit more strict with our drivers.
Yeah,
we need to maybe give them a little bit more protection, because Eric, that when you were reading that was the first time I thought to myself, wow, that's actually really scary.
Yeah.
I mean, I read about the incident. I listened to, like Jeff Gluck's podcast, and he talked about it. I'm like, that's no big deal. Kyle, whatever. Kyle handled it, got in his face, but the repeated attempts to grab him and then hitting him across the chest is just, I mean, that guy could have had, maybe not a gun. I don't want to go too extreme, but he could have like a, some sort of an object or whatever.
You can do a lot of damage without an object, I mean, that's the thing.
Like,
sure.
Pull him off the cart or something.
Yeah. These drivers are not signing up for this. That's not part of the deal. And, I mean, I don't want to be all high and mighty that I've got a press pass now and I get this access, but as somebody, as a media member, it does amaze me at how many fans, how many just regular people have the same access that I have as a media member at the track. I mean, you look on the grid during pre-race, and I mean, these guys are getting in their cars to go do battle for 3 hours in, heat and at these speeds, and you got just fans everywhere crowding around them. And, even as they're walking to the cars, they're signing autographs, they're having people holler things at them. And tell me when was the last time you went to a basketball game where you got to have autographs from the players as they're leaving the field, or leaving the court?
Yeah. After a game, never.
NFL,
never.
It doesn't happen. They run off the field. You don't get autographs afterwards. And these guys have the opportunity to do that. And I'm not saying that the access should be taken away, but I'm saying that these fans need to not. One fan's going to ruin it for everybody.
I tell you what. Well, NASCAR has made great strides in safety,
right,
on the track. Now it's time to take a look at safety all over the track.
Yeah, because
this is a safety issue. It's not a car crashing into a wall and somebody getting hurt. This is something totally different. But nonetheless, if you are touting your safety of your sport, this is something that needs to be considered. I think NASCAR should don't wait, start now, and take a serious look at what kind of access you're granting these fans, and these tracks need to do the same. They need to work together.
Yeah, it's tough. And at the same boat, though, you got a bunch of fans that are already feeling alienated by the sport, and you take their access away that they've always had. They're going to feel more, and I don't know. But you're right. I mean, we can't wait for something to happen. It needs to be fixed before it happens.
No, we don't need sorry to be so blunt, but we don't need the Dale Earnhardt of off-track incidents to happen. We need to nip it now and be done with it.
Yeah.
Whatever that means. But we got to keep the driver safe, and we got to keep not only the driver safe, but we need to keep the crews safe. There's a lot of guys walking around. People don't like Kyle Busch, and a crew member's walking around in an M&M shirt.
Right.
He's susceptible too. You got to think about that stuff.
Well,
I hate to be too extreme about it, but it's the truth.
One thing I'll say too is, and this is related to this sort of, is that to the fans out there who want to meet these drivers, who want to get an autograph, who want to be close to these drivers, I know for many years I went to the track and I sat in the stands. I came to the track, went to my seat, sat in the stands. Sometimes there might be an appearance at like a local store, or there might be, they might be doing a signing in the hauler, and you go to those things and there's a million people there. There's this gigantic line and it's just not worth the effort to try and deal with it. Or you'd go see them at an appearance and they'd talk for 30 seconds and they'd run off and they wouldn't sign any autographs, and maybe you could get close to them and that's it. If you know what you're doing at a track, you can get super close to these guys. You can get, Michigan is a perfect example, but every track I was at this year, all you need is a pit pass, and you can buy a pit pass. And if you're at the right places at the right time, which I'll give you a little piece of advice, the best place to be if you can get to a fan zone or the pits, or however the pass is worded at that particular track, go to the red carpet. Most of these tracks do a red carpet to the driver's meeting. The drivers come out on their way to the driver's meeting. They sign autographs all the way along there. You get yourself there early, you get on that railing, and you can meet every single driver in the field as they come by you. And that's what we're talking about here is these fans have this access, and take advantage of it now before it goes away, because stuff like this is gonna end it. So.
Yep, we're gonna have one more of these incidents, and who knows? I don't know. I hate to see the next one coming, but hopefully something gets done.
Yep, I agree. A little bit more on the race before we head on to other things. First of all, we had an excellent race at Bristol. This is the second excellent race we had at Bristol this year. I don't personally remember a whole lot about April at this point now, it was April.
Yeah, it was
but
rain
I
out.
do remember it
that.
was a good race.
Yes.
And we were excited about it afterwards. So do we have the old Bristol back? Have they at least created something that is worthy of the excitement that Bristol used to bring? What do we think on this? Where does this stand in the the history of Bristol, I guess?
I feel like we've talked about this a little bit.
We probably
before.
did in April, actually.
I think, yeah. Well, I know, but I'm trying to recall what I've said in the past. But
you don't want to contradict yourself?
Well, here's what I think today.
Okay.
I guess moving forward, it's not the old Bristol.
No.
It's good, but I think if NASCAR were to announce, "Hey guys, we're redoing everything. We're going back to the 36-degree banking, one lane," I think NASCAR fans would freak out. I think they'd be so ecstatic to know that the old Bristol is coming back, but it's not.
Right.
The whole sport's different now. It's not the same as it was. The Bristol Night Race is not the sold out show that it used to be.
Right.
And I don't know if it ever will be again, but
not as long as there's that many seats in that place.
Exactly. And if you're a fan of NASCAR racing, this is NASCAR racing at its purest form.
Right.
This is it. Short track Saturday night under the lights. It's as good as it gets right now, and every time it's on, we got to soak it in.
Well, I'll tell you what, back in the the early 2000s, you couldn't get a ticket to Bristol.
Yep.
You couldn't even they didn't even have a waiting list because there was no point in having one. By the time people were called on the waiting list, they would usually have moved or passed away, so they didn't keep one.
Yeah. It's like the Green Bay Packers Lambeau Field season tickets.
Right.
Like there's a waiting list for 20 years on that thing.
And now you look at it, and if you're privy to what they're doing, you can see that they've taken sections out and created fan zones. They've hung banners underneath the suites to eliminate like multiple rows of seats at the top of the grandstands that you don't see that are still there that they don't fill, and the place is still not even close to sold out. So you could get a ticket to it no matter what. And I'll tell you what, my desire to go to Bristol and watch a race at Bristol is no different than it was in the 2000s when I couldn't get a seat.
Yeah.
And because of that, I'm going to do everything in my power to be there next year for this race.
Yeah,
but
it'd be great.
Yeah, so I think the diehards, it's still the race it used to be. It's not the level that it used to be. It's still a spectacle, but not. And you talk about if they announced they were tearing the track up and putting the old track back in. The problem is they can't put the old track back in.
Yeah, it's not happening
because the old track was also beat to crap. It was worn down. There was wires showing through the track from when they lay the concrete down.
Yep.
That type of character is what creates that racing too. And the cars are different. Everything's different. You're just not going to get that back. And I think what we've got now at Bristol works.
Pretty dang good. Yeah,
it's really good. You got a good, and honestly, there were times at Bristol where there were too many wrecks. And I'm a person who likes some wrecks, but there were too many in the past. And so in some races, and now it's nice. We get some green flag runs. The stages I think add to it, even though Brian Keselowski doesn't agree. And
that's two.
Yeah. So Brian Keselowski responded to me on Twitter today, and he does not agree.
Follow Eric on Twitter if you want to know where these inside jokes are coming from tonight.
Yeah.
That's
So
all I'll say.
But they've created a side by side racing that we can do there, but it's still tough to pass. The bump and run's still there. I think we've got the best of what. First of all, we got the best we're going to get at Bristol. And I think we've got the best of the new Bristol and the old Bristol combined to create the current Bristol, and I think it's an acceptable package.
Yeah, I will say this. I've gotten over seats not being full.
Yeah.
For
I don't even care. I don't even care anymore.
Sport. Yeah, but there is one place where it bothers me.
Yeah.
And seeing what I saw this weekend bothered me. It just did, and I know it's not the end of the world.
Right.
I mean, there was probably what 80,000 people there, maybe something like that. I mean, that's a pretty dang good show. It's just we live in a different world, and we get that. I think you and I get that probably better than most. But just thinking about what that place was, it's crazy to not see a full night race at Bristol. It's still in the back of my mind. Just bothers me. It's the one track where I think. Not seeing full grandstand still is like a craw for me.
Right. Now, I will say they were talking about threatening weather.
Sure, yeah.
From about Tuesday to Wednesday on, but that didn't affect. I mean, it affected it some, but not to the level you would have still noticed a significant number of empty seats. I'm really of the mindset, and I don't know if I've talked about it on the podcast or not, but I've talked about it personally quite a bit. I really, honestly like the smaller crowds.
Me too.
As a fan going to the track, I don't have to deal with that many people. There were too many people at the track.
Yeah.
In the mid 2000s. And as a matter of fact, that was part of the reason I stopped going, because it was such a pain to deal with all the people.
Yeah, going to MIS was terrible in the mid 2000s when there was 130,000 people.
Oh, yeah, it was awful. Now, I'm not happy with what it's caused, and it's put the sport in a struggle because all that money was coming in and now it's not. So that's disappointing to me. But I personally, we have county fairs up here, and I choose the crappy county fair down the road because there's less people there than the one that that there's a ton of that's the best fair. So I don't
mind a smaller crowd. I don't. I think about and Bristol hosted that college football game a couple years back that Tennessee and I think it was Virginia Tech. Neither here nor there, but when I watched that on TV and I thought, my God, there she is. There's the old Bristol. That place was absolutely cram packed.
Yep.
It brought back good memories. Dale Earnhardt and Bobby and Terry Labonte and all the great Bristol night races from the past. It's just different, and that takes getting used to. But like I said, it's with Bristol, it's still the one place where I kind of feel like maybe it's like sacred ground.
Right.
And to see that sacred ground different is just hurt. It just hurts a little bit.
I'll say one more thing on the crowd sizes. To those people, those diehard NASCAR fans that are in one breath complaining about the smaller crowds and in the other breath complaining about we don't have enough short tracks, we need to go back to short tracks, pick an argument, because the smaller the crowds get, the better chance is that you're going back to those short tracks.
Yeah,
because if the crowds get small enough to where those tracks can accommodate them easier, then NASCAR is going to put a lot more effort into considering that. But now, and I'm going to go on a major tangent. This isn't in the show notes at all here, but I was thinking about this week with the whole, there's all this talk, 2020, we need to cut out the second dates at all these tracks. And we need to just go to these tracks one time, and then we can add some other tracks to schedule and shorten the schedule up. So here's the problem that you don't think about. And this comes from, I forget who it was. It might have been the president of Martinsville on a podcast or something talking about Martinsville when it snowed out and they raced on Monday earlier this year. And he talked about the fact that when a race rains out, when a race goes an extra day, and I talked to some people at MIS about this too. When that happens, these tracks don't have a ton of full-time employees. These tracks are open for these weekends. All those people that work the concession stands, all the people that work the ticket gates, all that stuff, they've got a job on Monday to go to. So when your race rains out and it moves to the next day, now those people aren't there. You have to struggle to get those people there. So the other thing to think about is that these tracks, let's take Michigan, for example. Michigan has a number of events they do throughout the year, but their two big events are the 2 Cup weekends. So let's say each of those Cup weekends accounts for a third of their revenue. And then the extra events they do accounts for the other third. I'm not saying this based on any knowledge whatsoever. I'm just breaking it down and making it simple. Yep. If you take out one of those weekends, you've now removed a third of the revenue of that track.
Right.
What's that track going to do? Can these tracks survive to pay these people that need to run these tracks, to do this stuff, to keep the upkeep, to do what they need to do? It's not just as simple as, okay, well, sorry, you don't get a date. You're affecting the lives of people. You're affecting an entire business in that decision. So it's not just as easy as, nope, you just get one date and that's it. There's a lot more to think about it. And that's the side that people don't give NASCAR credit for, that they have to work on that too. They can't just abandon these guys.
Yep. And it's the big TV contracts that are signed as well, which and people may not know this, but the racetracks get the most of their money, not from your ticket, but they get it from that TV money. That's where the big bucks are coming in.
I think we really need to
take.
Go ahead.
If you take. Oh, I'm sorry. You had cut out there. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I was just going to say that I think we need to get over the whole. There's a chance that we're going to see some changes with Cup dates. There may be a track added here or there or whatever, but I think we need to get over this dream of these gigantic changes in Cup. I think those changes come at the lower levels. Those changes come at the Truck Series, where the sanction fees and the money is not at the same level, and it's easier for a date to move and not affect these big tracks. So I think maybe you see some moves in the Truck Series. You may see some moves in the Xfinity Series that could maybe build for a move 5-10 years down the road in the Cup Series as well. But it's not, I'm sorry, 2020 is not that far away. It's not going to change overnight like people want it to. It's just not. We need to stop with that pipe dream, because we're just going to be disappointed in 2020 when it doesn't happen.
But I will say this, just to maybe play a little bit of devil's advocate with you.
Yeah.
But I am on the Jeff Gluck bandwagon of more short tracks.
Oh, me too.
And I think NASCAR fans don't quit beating that drum.
No.
Keep beating that drum. And like you said, Eric, I totally agree with you. It's going to take a long time, but if we keep saying, and us diehard fans keep saying, we want more short tracks, eventually, it could be 5 years down the road, whatever that is. Eventually, I think we can get there.
Yeah.
The fans of NASCAR have a ton of power, and the drivers want it too. So if we can keep, stay consistent on it, I think maybe someday we can make some of these things happen. But I totally agree with your point. I just wanted to emphasize that. Well, I hope that we get to the more short tracks here soon.
Here's the other thing: if you want more short tracks, then show NASCAR.
Go to your local track. Yeah.
Well, not even that. Truck Series, Xfinity Series run at Iowa. We don't sell that place out. People aren't showing up for those races. If you're not showing up for those races, they're not going to bring the Cup Series there. I'll even go as far as to say Eldora. The weekend before Eldora, they run the Kings Royal, and they put 30,000 people into that place, 25,000 people. And then they run the truck race, and there's 18,000 people. And I know that's still a lot of people, but it's not. It's not filling the place. If you really want to show NASCAR that you want a Cup race at Eldora, get to the truck race and support that race. Make it to where you can't get a ticket to that place. And then NASCAR's going to go, oh, maybe we got something here for the bigger series. But if you're not filling the stands, if you're not getting people out to the track for the lower series, you're never going to do it for the big series.
Oh, yeah. NASCAR listened to the fans once. A great example we have is Rockingham.
Yeah.
NASCAR brought it back. They brought the truck series to Rockingham and gave fans a chance, and the fans never showed up.
Exactly.
And the fans were the ones screaming about it, for forever. We need Rockingham back on the schedule. And NASCAR threw them a bone and said, we'll bring the trucks.
Same thing happens to the guy who invests millions of dollars in North Wilkesboro. Yeah. It's just, I'm sorry. I love North Wilkesboro. I wish they'd race there again. It's a massive undertaking right now that probably would be more expensive than building a new track, and people just aren't going to show up for it. The only way you're going to get people to show up to North Wilkesboro would be to dig a giant hole underneath the track, lift the sucker up, and move it somewhere where there's not a race, because it's just in an oversaturated area, and it's just not going to happen.
And Bristol sits in an oversaturated area itself. You get Bristol and Richmond and Martinsville, they're all kind of clumped together there, and a couple others. So yeah, there's a lot going on there, but gosh.
So remember when we said this podcast was going to be short this week because
it's never.
We didn't say that in the air.
We got too much good stuff to talk about. I'm back, man. I got a lot of things. I've been gone for 2 weeks. I got a lot of things to get off my chest.
Well, I guess we already ate into the news items, one thing. So let's do one more thing on Bristol, though, before we move on to the other stuff. Kurt Busch gets the win.
Yeah, we should talk about Kurt just a little bit.
Is he the fourth guy? We keep talking about who the fourth guy is. Who is it? Is it Kurt?
I am retiring my fourth guy opinion. We don't have one. Can I just say we don't have a fourth guy? It's the wild card.
Every week if somebody new wins or somebody new runs well, they're the fourth guy.
I will say this though, the more wins that Stewart-Haas as an organization racks up, the better I like Kevin Harvick's odds.
Yeah,
Harvick's my pick to win this, the bad boy, and Stewart-Haas just shows no weaknesses. They just keep winning.
Yeah, it's Harvick's championship to lose. I do agree with you there, but you can't retire your fourth guy because there's going to be a fourth guy.
Somebody's got to do it.
Somebody's got to do it.
There could be another third guy.
Yeah.
I firmly believe that the big three is not getting to Homestead as the big three.
I agree.
I will take that until it actually happens.
I agree. Speaking of which, we got to start thinking about our brackets. We'll be doing those in a couple weeks.
Yeah. We're getting close here, down to the nitty gritty. We've got a couple races to go.
Yes, we are. All right. Anything else to say about Kurt? I mean, that was a good performance. It was not a dominating performance, but a big win for them to finally get one. And
he's been in the news a lot about leaving that ride and going elsewhere and this, that, and the other thing. So, just kind of solidifies him a little bit and the organization. Kurt's always good for a win or two during the season. So we'll see if he can bring that forward. I don't expect him to win a whole lot more, but that was a good one. That's a good one.
I kind of feel like that's it for him in the Stewart-Haas car, because I'm starting to think he's not going to be there next year.
I don't think so either. I think the rumors are getting a little bit too loud.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk last year, but not to this level. So, and not to the point where we're going to talk about some stuff coming up here that I don't know. The team's shopping around, so I'm thinking it's probably a foregone conclusion. So
I think so. I think they already know.
So speaking of next year, I talked a little bit with Aaron last week about some of the silly season stuff, and we got some dominoes started to fall, just at least in rides opening up. We haven't seen any moves yet, but we did see a couple drivers announce they were heading out. We kind of do these together, I think. Elliott Sadler announces Monday, I think it was, that he's planning to retire at the end of the season, and then Casey Kane follows it up immediately the day after, announcing that he will retire at the end of the season as well. So Elliott Sadler leaving the Junior Motorsports number 1 in the Xfinity Series, Casey Kane leaving the Levine Family Racing number 95. Now, both of those are interesting in the whole rumor mill because there's talk of certain drivers moving to those rides. Casey's is very interesting, especially if they sign with Toyota next year, and that becomes an option. So what I was mentioning before about the 41 car is apparently Casey Kane. We have an article on here from motorsport.com that Kane turned down a chance to talk with Stewart-Haas for that 41 car. So again, the fact that they're talking to drivers or trying to talk to drivers leads me to believe that they don't think Kurt's coming back next year.
Yeah, and the fact that Casey Kane wouldn't take a meeting is interesting.
Yeah,
I don't know what his chances were of even getting that ride if Stewart-Haas was just kind of putting out a feeler.
Right.
Yeah, but I think Casey Kane's burned out. I think it sounds like, I mean, that's the way I'm reading into it. Casey's burned out, and for maybe what the salary would be to continue for another 36 race schedule,
right,
would be probably too much to handle for him. So
kind of what I feel like here is that this year was kind of a feel out year, I think, for Casey. He didn't have to worry about money because he still had the Hendrick money coming in this year.
Correct. Yep.
And he signed a 1-year contract, give him a chance to do something different with a different team, see if he still got it in him.
Yep.
And has come to the conclusion that he doesn't, and that's
Yeah.
good on him. He's heading
Yeah.
out and
Well,
probably
you
go
know
race
he's
some.
not-
He's gonna race some sprint cars, I'm sure, and do some fun
Yeah,
stuff. And
he'll be fine.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
He-
Yeah, you got to give Casey credit for not just collecting checks.
right,
A lot of people have come into the series and just collected checks, and Casey's as talented as anybody mid pack or back. I mean, he's definitely I guess you could say a top 20 skill set. He hasn't really hasn't performed that well in his career, but I wanted to ask.
I don't know that I'll agree with that.
I want to ask you. Well, that's
Casey's
what I
been
wanted
getting a
to ask
lot
you.
of crap about not being a strong driver, but he's got what? I think he's got 2 Coca-Cola 600 wins, doesn't he?
He's got some. Yeah, he's got some crown jewels.
He's got a Brickyard 400 win. Obviously, that was last year, but still, it's a win in the Brickyard 400.
Yep. Yeah, he's got some good wins in his career. He's kind of won everywhere. He's got a Sonoma win, Michigan and Charlotte, like you said. I just feel like
2015, 2016, actually, pretty much 2015 on has been where he struggled the most.
yeah.
Even 2014, he got a win in 2014, but only 3 top 5s.
Well, and here's what I wanted to. I'm looking at Casey's career numbers. He has 3 top 10 points finishes in his 15 years. That's not good.
Yeah.
And I don't know. He never had a season where he racked up, even 20 top 10s. He just never was that consistent, I guess. He'd have a good run there, but
He's got the 6 wins in 2006.
yep, that was his 1 year
And
where he
that's
was.
it.
Yep. Well, he kind of reminds me a little bit of Kurt Busch, just a little bit. Kurt obviously was a little more successful.
Right.
Almost won, twice as many races, but Kurt came in and it was 2 or 3 years in, and all of a sudden he was a champion. And Casey Kane had the same kind of thing happen where he came in, boom, 6 wins in his third full season, and then just never got it back. He had a great 2012, but that was it. That was it for Casey.
Yeah.
I hate that he's gonna leave with a whimper. He was so popular with the fans for a while.
What do you think? Hall of Fame talk eventually, or no?
I don't think he gets in.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. Well,
It's
no,
hard.
I don't
It's
think
really
so.
tough.
He's got the Coke 600s, but he just never was. I don't know. I don't know,
I
man.
think his success is too far out, and I agree. I think it's too much of a smattering of success. I mean, 18 wins in
It's not just-
15 years
yeah.
is not anything to sneeze at.
That's no slow. That's no slack. It's not like we're talking about Mark Martin here,
Right.
or even Dale Jr. Like those guys are Hall of Famers, and they never won championships.
Right.
Mark Martin, maybe even similar, never won a championship or a Daytona 500. But
Right.
yeah, Casey's got a couple crown jewels. Maybe he squeaks in later down the road. I tell you what, he's the greatest truck series driver of all time. If you look at his numbers there,
Right.
career average finish of 1.2 in 6 races. That's pretty good.
Yeah. 5 wins in 6 races. So.
And 1 second place finishes. 1 second place finish. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a hard time kind of. I think maybe down the line, maybe when Casey's gone, we can maybe assess his career a little bit more. But I just feel like it's a disappointment. I hate to use that word, but
Right.
Casey came into the sport with so much. I don't know. He had so much promise. Ray Evernham believed in him, and yeah, it's a bummer. That's a bummer. But Casey's going on his own terms, so you can't fault him for that.
Yeah. No, I agree. And then I had somewhere I was going to go with the Casey Kane discussion. I don't remember where it was. So let's talk a little bit about Elliott Sadler, another one that you kind of can go. I kind of feel like in the disappointment category. I just feel like Elliott never quite did what he was capable of doing. He always just seemed to be in just the wrong spot or just not good enough equipment. And he's had the opportunities and some good equipment here the last couple of years of his career in the Xfinity Series, and still just not been able to quite do what he should be able to do in that equipment. It's kind of been the story of his career to me.
Yeah, he's so close to winning championships the last couple of years for Junior Motorsports. I mean, he's made the Final Four the last 3 years. Or excuse me, the last 2 years. He's finished second the last 2 years. But yeah, he was in the Cup Series. He was pretty popular there for a while. Had some good rides. Had a good run. Had a good run in 2004. That was kind of his best year. when he was with Robert Yates. Robert Yates was still kind of a power, but not really. They were starting to begin the downslide.
Right.
A couple years removed from Dale Jarrett winning championships, but
He ran for the Wood Brothers. You got to like anybody that runs for the Wood Brothers, right?
yeah, but you got to win for him at
Right.
Bristol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, right, you like everybody who's run for the Wood Brothers, right?
I don't.
I was trying. Sadler's been on his lid quite a few times, too. He had those 2 flips at Talladega. He barrel rolled, 12 times or something like that at Michigan in practice?
Pocono, he had the engine fly out.
Yeah, he's had some good wrecks, that's for sure.
He has had some good wrecks. The M&M's car took a couple of wild rides, like you said, at Talladega. Yep.
So, but, yeah, I mean, either way, Elliott's a good guy.
Good dude, though. Yeah, absolutely.
So, both of them will be missed in the sport for sure.
Yeah, they're 2 good dudes.
I don't see Casey sticking around much. I think you're going to see him in doing some dirt race and doing some sprint car stuff. And
I think he's going to be hanging out a lot at the dirt tracks.
Yeah.
I can see him running. He said he's going to run like 40 races in his sprint car. Casey's the guy I could see maybe going full-time outlaw if he wanted to.
Yeah.
I just don't know if he wants to.
Elliott, I could see as somebody who I could see him in a future role as some sort of NASCAR official. I don't know why. I just feel like I could see him working in NASCAR, but he does not live in Charlotte. He lives in Virginia. He was talking about that on Junior's podcast this week, and doesn't have an intention, sounds like, to live anywhere else. So that might make that difficult. So who knows? Who knows what Sadler will do? Both of them in pretty good shape. That I don't think they have too much to worry about. So.
No, they've. You know what though? That's the thing that we should maybe mention is both of these guys were multiple year veterans. Like they were grinding it out for nearly 20 years.
Yeah.
So I mean that's an accomplishment all itself, that you made a living, for the majority of your life as a race car driver is pretty phenomenal for anybody.
Right. Yeah. Elliott's first full-time season was in 1997 for the Xfinity Series.
Yep.
He ran his first full season in the Cup Series in 1999. So.
Yep.
And he ran full-time in Cup through 2010, and then went back to the Xfinity Series. So.
Yep. Yeah. Both guys were Gillette Motorsports, I think, at one point too. They were teammates.
Yep.
And that dysfunctional chapter of NASCAR history.
Right. No kidding.
Yeah. Yep.
Another piece to the rumor mill: Martin Truex Jr. not ruling out
I can't
switching.
wait for this one.
Not ruling out switching to other teams. I don't know. I'm really starting to feel like Truex is going to be on the move, and I think we're going to talk about a really ridiculous rumor in a second here, and I'm just going to call it a ridiculous rumor because there's no way it happens. There is no way it happens. Yeah, Truex I think is going to be on the move, and I expect to see him in the 41 car personally.
I think that's where we're headed. Well, and I texted you back when Barney Visser a couple weeks ago, he sent that press release out through Pockrass that what did he say? They anticipate they will be racing in 2019.
Right.
And I sent you that text, and I was like, this reeks of what's going on.
Right.
I mean, it just was coded in,
Yeah.
That's the way I read it. And then, shortly thereafter, we've got a lot of Truex rumors coming out. And I think you are correct that this 41 car, I mean, who wouldn't want that ride?
Right.
Honestly, I mean, look at what Eric Almirola's even doing with what he's got now too.
Right.
You gotta want to be with that team.
I think it's the best team in the sport right now. It's where you want to go.
And you and I were texting while I was gone, and my stance was, if you get Cole Pern to come with you, that's the big prize right there.
Right.
But I think he's one of the best in the business. I think Cole Pern is just phenomenal in everything he's done with that 78 car. Even before Truex was there, he was making some stuff happen. So
I think we see Truex in that 41 car, or we see him go to JGR and we see some shuffle in there with combining with that Levine Family Racing team. That's my prediction of what actually happens here, besides the goofiness we're going to talk about in a second.
Yeah, there's some goofiness out there. I was reading today, and this was not anything that I would take too seriously, but that Daniel Suarez could be on the move out of the 19. So I mean, that's another possibility, I guess, if you wanted to go down that road too. I don't know
Right.
how, what Gibbs would want to do there. But like you said, if we start shuffling these Toyotas around, um, but that 78 team, if they want to keep this thing going, they better get moving here soon because it's getting late.
So where does Kurt go? Does he end up out, or does he go
Yeah, no,
somewhere?
I think Kurt goes the one. I
That's
think
kind of my
that's
thought. You
yeah,
think
that's
McMurray
that.
goes to the Xfinity Series like the talk is?
I think McMurray might be done. If McMurray doesn't get a decent ride, I could see him probably retiring or
You
maybe going to
go down
the
and run for junior.
Yeah, that could be a possibility if he still wants to run.
Yeah, his name and I forget who else's name was thrown around for possibly going down in junior's team. The one that, and the other one that's interesting that could play into this mix is, the intent is for Christopher Bell to run another year in the Xfinity Series, but if he keeps clicking off wins and wins himself a championship this year, it's going to be tough to keep him down there another year.
Yeah, well, and if Levine does make the switch to Toyota, that gives Joe Gibbs a nice little satellite that he can move him around into, like they did with Eric Jones, get him up there and
Right.
and get him some seat time.
The one that I found really interesting that was really odd was the talk of Ryan Preece moving to Cup and running for JTG Doherty Racing.
Yeah, that was another thing I read.
think that's crazy. Don't get me wrong. I think Ryan Preece is super talented, but he hasn't run a full series in the Xfinity Series yet. You're going to run him in Cup?
Yeah, and if AJ Allmendinger is going to be gone, which Bob Pockris was kind of talking that it might happen.
Right.
I guess who do you replace him with?
Right.
So who's out? Who's the next best guy out there? You're not getting Christopher Bell.
Right.
He's locked down. So who
Yeah.
do you if you want a young guy in there, who do you go after?
Right.
Unless you want to try to go after a veteran like McMurray, if you
That's
wanted
true.
to go that route too. So
Yep.
there could be a couple options out there for you.
McMurray's got the potential to steal a big win somewhere.
Yep. Well, we're seeing the musical chairs be placed. The music hasn't started playing yet, but the chairs are
love
out.
this time of year. I
I
love this
love
stuff.
Yeah, silly season's the best. That's what makes like the NFL and the NBA so fun too, is the trades and rumors and free agency. So yeah, this is our version of free agency, which we love.
That's half the reason, James, that I want to do a podcast next week, is just because we don't know what's going to drop.
Yeah.
Not to mention we've got 2 road courses this weekend in the Xfinity and Truck Series that we can talk about next week.
Man.
Yeah,
awesome.
There's all kinds of stuff to talk about this weekend. So before we get to this weekend, let's talk about this ridiculous rumor.
Yeah, you and I had talked about this a little bit this week too.
You're not buying into this at all, are you? Do you believe any of this?
I think there's something to it. I don't think. I think there's something to it. I do. I think there's something to it. I don't know how much I believe it yet, but I think maybe there's some toes in the water here.
All right, so I have the Reddit post pulled up here, and I'm going to read through some of this. So here's the deal. First of all, this is Borchert97 on Reddit posted this. Apparently he's already commented in a couple spots, blah, blah, blah. He has a source but won't name the source because it's someone in the garage area. Well, everybody's got a source. So here's the talk. KBM moving to the Cup Series. Kyle Busch, Kurt Busch, first 2 cars. Furniture Row loses its technical alliance with JGR. I'm reading most of this word for word. KBM essentially replaces Furniture Row in that role. More funding, based in North Carolina, larger roster, eventually becoming a 4-car team like Stuart Haas. So here's the points to support his claim. He says Kyle is technically in a contract year, and while that doesn't mean much because Gibbs would no doubt re-sign him, it does mean it's easier for Gibbs to release him. Kurt is most likely out of a ride, but does have sponsorship following him with Monster. Assume, I guess. Let's see. Monster was with them before, as when they were with KBM. Blah 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Furniture Row and Truex's fate's hanging in the edge. JGR could easily ditch Furniture Row, which I think is going to happen. Grab KBM, which I don't think is going to happen. Be their new technical alliance team. They have Kyle driving the 54, Kurt driving the 97, which is the number he won the championship with. Furniture Row could be bought out by KBM possibly for the charter. And then BK Racing was mentioned as up to grabs for their charters. However, BK Racing was purchased by Front Row Motorsports this week. So that ruins that theory. But according to this Reddit thread, it does not hurt Kyle's chances at starting KBM and Cup that much. Plenty of teams have spare charters. RCR has a third. RPM has a second. Kyle will most likely reopen an Xfinity Series team and probably run one car with several drivers. And so, yeah. So basically, here's the rundown. Kyle out of the 18 into the 54. Kurt out of the 41 into the 97. Cole Custer moves to Cup in the 41, possibly renumbered 00. I think that's a huge mistake. Truex out of the 78 moves to the 18 car or a third KBM car. Christopher Bell, either one more year in Xfinity or he goes to KBM in the third car. Yeah.
I just love that you completely destroyed Cole Custer in such a.
No, I don't have anything against Cole Custer.
I'm still laughing about it.
He's a good driver, but I just have not seen anything from Cole that says let me put him in a Cup car.
Yeah, that's correct.
He just
I
I guess
that's the way you said it. Was
the same
so
can be said.
Good.
Well, because I'm just irritated with this rumor because I think it's stupid. But
here's where we're going to disagree. But go ahead.
Here's the thing with the rumor. All right, so either this rumor is complete BS, which I believe it is, or Kyle has lost his friggin' mind because Kyle tried this in the Xfinity Series. He started his own. He had KBM. He moved up to the Xfinity Series. They struggled. Kyle Busch, the winningest driver in Xfinity, didn't win a race in his own Xfinity car. They struggled. Hold on, I'm not done. You stop.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
So, and don't get me wrong, his truck series has been a lot more successful since then. He's definitely built things up there. It's a completely different organization than what it was back then. But a successful truck team does not make a successful Xfinity team. It does not make a successful Cup team. If you need to look anywhere, look at GMS Racing, which has probably the championship winning driver in the truck series, has a team that could win any weekend in the truck series. They don't have that in the Xfinity series, and they're still struggling to find a way to Cup right now. So I think it's a losing proposition. I don't think you're going to argue that the same thing can be said for Tony Stewart when he started SHR, but Kyle doesn't have Gene Haas. And that's where the difference is. So go ahead, James. Go ahead and make your wrong argument.
I'd like to push. Yeah, I got to push back on a few things. First of all, I don't think the Xfinity thing was that big of a failure.
He didn't win a race, man.
They won one race with Kurt.
Yeah,
Kurt
but
won.
Kyle didn't win.
But
the best driver in Xfinity Series history.
They pulled the plug fairly quickly.
They did that. That is true.
They won a race. They finished in the top 10 over half of the races they ran. As a one-car organization the entire time.
I will say too, they did not have the support of Joe Gibbs because Joe did not like that.
Yeah, and he ran. Yeah, and Kyle's team is competing against when Parker Kligerman raced the full season.
Right.
Parker's racing to try to beat Kyle Busch every freaking week, so of course he's not going to win. So I think that team was not that bad. They did pretty darn good for, the 2 full seasons they had. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. You can look the numbers up on Racing Reference if you want to.
Yeah.
To push back on that, this is a ludicrous idea. I don't think it's that ludicrous, but and like you hinted at right there, that I cite Tony Stewart as the example here, and you're right. Tony doesn't have Gene Haas, or Tony has Gene Haas, and Kyle wouldn't have a Gene Haas, which is fine. But Gene Haas had Gene Haas and did absolutely nothing. Gene Haas didn't have a Tony Stewart.
Right. Well, don't get me wrong. I certainly do not give the credit to that team only to Gene Haas. Tony Stewart is a gigantic part of why that team.
Correct. And Rick Hendrick was a gigantic part of that team as well.
Tony's a businessman. I guess Kyle is. He's got his own team, but I don't know, man.
But think about Tony Stewart when he went to Haas. Okay, he had been running not even NASCAR teams, but he was running dirt teams. So Tony had the infrastructure of dirt, not anything NASCAR, but he had the business sense, like you said. Kyle Busch, on the other hand, has been running NASCAR organizations for a decade at this point. So he's got the NASCAR infrastructure. He's got probably people that know how to do this thing. And if you're going to partner with anybody in the Cup Series, just like Tony Stewart, Tony partnered with Hendrick at the peak of Hendrick. Kyle could jump in and partner with Gibbs at the peak of Gibbs and hit the ground running. And it may be a struggle for a year or two, but if Kyle's going to set himself up for the future, is this not the best way for Kyle to plan for his 40s, 50s, and 60s and way down the road? I think that we need the next generation of owners in this sport because we don't have anybody really to replace a Rick Hendrick, a Joe Gibbs, or a Roger Penske, or a Jack Roush for that matter. The next guy in line is Tony Stewart. Why can't we have Kyle Busch right alongside Tony Stewart as our next generation of car owner?
Right.
I think it makes pretty good sense for Kyle if he's going to do it. Yeah, he sacrifices maybe a year or two of competitiveness, but long term, if he can get this thing built up and going, I think it's an awesome idea for Kyle to jump in right now.
Let's play a game of how many successful driver owners have we had?
Two.
Let's play that game. Yeah.
It's two.
Because, I mean, Kawicki did it, but, we don't know what that would have all ended up being. Tony's done it. Darrell Waltrip struggled. Richard Petty struggled with his own team. Yep. I mean, the King struggled with his own team.
Yes, he did.
Darrell said a million times it was the biggest mistake he ever made.
Yep.
Heck, even Dale Earnhardt wasn't successful as a team owner.
Yes, that's correct.
I mean, he had competitive cars, but he didn't win a bunch. He won his first. Park got a race before that, right?
Yeah, Park was running for a while, and then Junior came along, and then Michael.
Right,
Waltrip.
so they did have a few wins before Michael won.
Yeah, they had some wins.
Yep. But it still was not a major success, and never became a major success as a result of his death, possibly.
Well, that's a different thing.
Yeah, we won't mention any names. We don't want to get sued.
Yeah.
But
TE, you're the initial.
Hey, now I gotta bleep it out.
No, I can. Yeah, I know. I can push back just a little bit on this too. How many successful owners have we had since Tony Stewart showed us the new model?
Right.
None, because nobody else has tried it.
Yeah, it's a completely different boat. I see your side. I still think it's insane. I just don't see it happening. I'll tell you what, as somebody who covers the sport right now, and as somebody who has a podcast about the sport, oh man, if it happens, that'd be freaking awesome.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
I mean,
yeah. And are you looking at this, Eric, as I guess I'm trying to get your viewpoint on this. Are you looking at it kind of in the fan perspective, where why would Kyle Busch do this and sacrifice his prime?
No,
is that kind of where you're coming from?
I don't really feel that way.
You think it's going to fail as a business?
I just think it's going to fail. I just think, I don't know.
You do not have faith in Kyle Busch, the businessman.
It's so hard because, like I said, it's been so successful. I guess I'm just really skeptical. I guess it's not that I don't believe that he could do it. It's not that I think it's going to fail. It's that I'm so skeptical. It's when you have it as good as Kyle has it right now.
Yeah, I agree with you
to
there.
Take that leap. Now, if he does it, I applaud him, man. I wish I could take a leap like that.
Yeah.
But I don't, it just seems so out there and so off the wall that,
yeah,
I don't know.
But if
somebody's
somebody's
going to do it, Kyle.
Yep. If somebody's going to do it, it's Kyle Busch. And if anybody could be successful in the whole garage, it's Kyle Busch.
Yeah.
I think he could do it.
I mean, he just strikes me as so different than someone like Tony. Tony has these partnerships with all these different sponsors and things like that.
Yep.
I mean, I don't see Kyle in that same aspect.
Yep. Kyle really doesn't have that sponsorship backing. And
but if they can get Monster to sign on with it, Monster's leaving NASCAR as the chief sponsor, that they can come in and put that type of funding into this team. It might not matter. So
yeah, Toyota has shown that Kyle Busch is their boy,
right,
and they're going to stick with him.
Well, I mean Kyle is fully responsible for half the Xfinity field right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's grown these young drivers. He has this talent, and not that everybody that gets in a KBM car is great, but he has this ability to pick this young talent out. And I think the way he does it is he goes and races these guys, and when they beat him, he picks them up. You know,
that's a great point. And if you're Toyota, and Toyota's shown a great investment in our sport, and if Toyota could have another 4-car pipeline down the line for their talent, I mean, you'd think Toyota's not licking their chops at like, hey, we could have Gibbs and Kyle Busch.
Yeah, but can they have Gibbs and Kyle Busch? Can you really have two top teams?
It's hard to say. It's hard to say.
Yeah, it's tough.
It's tough. But again, we have to transition at some point from the old boys into our next generation.
You're right. I mean, what's going to happen to Jack Roush's team when
Yeah, we're not going to have. Yeah.
when Jack
I mean,
Roush steps away? What's going to happen to Hendrick's team when he steps away? You know,
yeah.
these guys aren't going to be here forever, and they're either going to transfer ownership of these teams to somebody. I mean, obviously, we know what was going to happen with Hendrick, but Ricky's not around anymore. So
yeah, Gibbs and JD was set to take over for Joe.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he has his tragic illness.
Yeah.
And he can't do it, so Joe's back in.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then that's like I said, Tony Stewart's the last man. He's the next man up with all these guys. And that's why I think Tony made his switch to Ford is he knew he had to become independent at some point, and if Kyle gets to that point, maybe down the road, I could see Kyle doing something similar. He has to make it his own. So
if this happens, it's the biggest silly season ever in the history of NASCAR.
It's up there with Junior. It's right there.
I think it's bigger than Junior. I think this is gigantic if it happens, especially with how many pieces are in here.
Yeah.
Especially if Truex becomes a part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking two of the big three moving. That's huge.
Yeah, and when Tony Stewart left Gibbs, I remember saying exactly what you said. Because as big of a Stewart fan as I was like, what an idiot! He's leaving Joe Gibbs race. He's leaving Joe Gibbs racing.
I thought he was nuts, but at the same time, it didn't surprise me because Tony. I thought
he was going to fail so fast.
I felt like he wasn't. He was so upset with the move to Toyota.
Yes, he was.
That had a lot to do with it because he was a Chevy guy. Of course, now he's got Fords, but yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting. I'm on board to see what happens, but I don't predict seeing.
I feel like I can get you to come around on this eventually.
You've won me over some. I still don't think it's going to happen. I think it's
I
think it's too much craziness. I feel like something like this coming out of Reddit. The fact that I know, but the fact that even the big media people aren't really touching it that much. I don't know.
Maybe Kyle, and that's maybe it. Maybe Kyle's been dipping his toe in, and this is the 2020 move or something.
See, I could see that much more. I just feel like it's so quick for it to happen.
It's not going to happen this year. I don't think it'll happen this year. I think, if anything, it's 2019 or 2020. Well, 2020 or 2021. Jeez, Pete.
I could see that. I could see a 2020, 2021 decision. That I'd be more on board with as a possibility. I just feel like to hear this now and have it announced for next season, there's no way.
Yeah, there's no way. I don't think it's going to happen this year.
But I think there's too many moving parts to make it happen a year or two down the road because you got guys that are too uncertain in between. I mean, does Kyle get to stick around for 1 year to make it? I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, I guess if he's got a partnership with JGR, maybe JGR does the thing that Hendrick did with Darrell and says, "I understand. You got to do what you got to do," and gives him the support. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to take some help because, like I said, with Tony Stewart, Rick Hendrick did everything he could to help that team be successful.
What about it's going to be just like when Junior switched numbers? What about all those 3 fans that Kyle has that got the 18s tattooed on their shoulder, man? They're going to have to scratch it out and put a 54 on there.
The infamous Rowdy Nation. Yeah.
I can't hate on Kyle. All right, let's end this on a high note. Or I don't know, high note, whatever. Let's do a Do We Care, James?
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of talk about how Dale Jr. is doing in the booth with NBC. And there's a poll out there on ESPN.
I voted in this poll.
Yeah, so did I. There's a poll out there to determine what the fans think. So I guess to start out with, James, what do you think? And then we'll talk about what the fans think. What do you think? How's Junior doing? And do you care?
Well, I do care because first off, I love Dale Jr. in the booth. We need him. We need him around as a broadcaster.
Yeah.
As far as how he's doing, he's fine. I don't think he's like this poll says. Is he the next John Madden or Dick Vitale?
Well, the options in this poll suck.
Yeah, they're pretty bad. They're pretty bad. I don't think he's. It's early. Let me be clear. It's early. I don't think he's great. I don't think he's bad. I think he's somewhere in the middle, and maybe someday he's got some potential. He gets really excited, which is a nice change of pace. And we've talked about him a couple of times, but
right.
I mean, He's fine. He's fine. He's fine for me. I'm not overly excited about it, but I think he's doing fine.
Here's my take on it. I don't think he's that great, but I think that's why he's great.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I
think
totally,
the fact
yeah.
that he's not polished in the booth, he's you or I sitting in the booth calling a race, and reacting to what's happening, that stuff he's seeing for the first time because he didn't see it from that view. I think he's got the ability to connect with the fans in a way that nobody else can. If you listen to the podcast, he gets tell so much behind the scenes stuff. It's awesome. Gives you such a view. I think, there was my best buddy, my best Twitter buddy, Nick Bromberg, was complaining about the Fox broadcast on for the Truck Series race. And there were a lot of complaints about the Truck Series, and I can't give Nick a hard time for complaining about it, because I will credit him. The Truck Series broadcast sucked on Fox. It was horrible, but I do like to say good things about the sport too. But that was 4, by the way, if you missed that. But it just feels like Fox is phoning it in, and I don't know if it's Junior that's making NBC so much better, if it's Fox not caring, especially with their truck broadcasts, that is making NBC so much better. I just feel like, in previous years, NBC's really been terrible with the commercials, and I don't feel like they're doing that this year. I don't know if they just found a mix and a way to do the side-by-side enough to where it's not annoying. Right. But I don't feel like we're going to commercial constantly. We'll see when we get to Talladega and we go to commercial every 4 laps. But I don't know. I just, everything that I mean, even, and I don't want to badmouth these guys, because I know how tough it is to do their jobs and stuff.
Yep.
But
hard job.
Rick Allen I think Rick Allen is one of the best announcers and one of the worst. It just depends on how he's doing on that particular day.
Contact.
Yeah. But I think I don't know, he hasn't really gotten on my nerves this year. Now, you put Lee Diffie in there, I would be totally on board with that. I love it. It was great listening to Lee in the Xfinity, or the IndyCar. Oh, we didn't talk about IndyCar yet. We'll get to that. Man, we're gonna be long, man.
It's okay. That's all right. Come back from vacation.
Yeah, I only did a half hour last week, so I can make up the extra half hour tonight. But I don't know. There's just something about the NBC broadcast. I don't think it's all Junior. I think Junior helps it. There's just something better about it, and I don't want to go back to Fox right now. And that's tough for me to say, because I really like Jeff Gordon. I really like Mike Joy. And I really like Mike Joy and Jeff Gordon.
Yeah, and Larry Mack.
Larry Mack. And Mike Joy and Jeff Gordon and Larry Mack. And that's it.
Yeah, Fox has got the talent. They just don't have it. What NBC brings is professional chops.
Yeah.
And I think what NBC did was they looked around and they saw the great example with Dale Jr., the great side-by-side with him is Tony Romo.
Yeah.
Coming straight off the field and into a big-time booth. And if you watch a football game that Tony Romo is broadcasting, it's the same thing.
Right.
He's not polished, but man, is he entertaining as heck to listen to.
I think NBC's done a great job of experimenting with different things too.
Yes, they have. Yeah.
One of the questions in this poll, we'll run through them real quick, but one of the questions is where Junior should be, whether he should be in the main booth, in a side booth, whatever. I like Junior better in the main booth, but they try something different almost every week. It keeps everybody on their toes. They talked about the deal with Rick Allen. Junior talked about it when they had the all analyst race at New Hampshire, where Rick Allen was down in the pits, and they said that was more so about getting Rick down there and letting him experience what the pit reporters experience and see what they're dealing with. And I like that. Originally I thought the idea was kind of silly, but to see it from that point of view, it makes sense. Okay, that's great. They want these guys to all have an idea of what each spot does. Mm-hmm. And I think that's great. And I think that's been part of it too, is we've not really seen the same broadcast 2 weeks in a row. It's almost like a different broadcast every week. So
yep, it's been good.
So let's run through the poll questions here. First question is, how would you rate Dale Jr. as a broadcaster? The options are a future John Madden / Dick Vitale, in the making, good but nothing special, like a 1-win season, and park him, he's just in the way. James, which one did you pick there?
I went right down the middle. Good.
Yeah, I went the top one just because I wanted to give him the most credit, because I think he's great in what he's doing, but I don't agree with the option. That's 66% of the people said the John Madden Dick Vitale. So are you watching races just to hear Dale Jr.? Option 1, Dale, yeah. And option 2, he keeps me tuned in when I start to lose interest. Number 3, I turn off the TV sound and put on the radio broadcast. Where'd you go, James? You went middle, didn't you?
I went down the middle. He keeps me tuned in. I'm not going to give him a Dale, yeah, but yep.
I went in the middle also, and that's where 54% of the people went for the top spot. How would you rank Slide Job Euphoria? Option 1, awesome, I want a t-shirt. Option 2, I didn't know the term until he said it, but it's cool. Option 3, meh, he didn't develop the term. What you went 3, didn't you?
I did. He did not develop the term. I think you should play the sounder right now, though.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
I also went number 3. Only 28% of the people said that. 49% said, awesome, I want a t-shirt. Where's the best place for Dale Jr. during the telecast? Option 1, the main booth. Option 2, the secondary booth with Steve Letarte or Jeff Burton. Option 3, the pit box with Letarte. And option 4, at a remote location around the track. James, what'd you go with?
He's main booth.
Yeah, same here. So did 54% of the people. Hopefully NBC listens to that, but it's
20,000 votes on all these polls, by the way.
It's an ESPN poll, so I bet NBC's not going to listen to much of it.
No,
but yeah, I'd like to see him back just in the main booth. But
did you see Dale when this poll was posted? Dale tweeted at Bob Pockers. It was a GIF or a GIF, whatever we're calling it, of Hank Hill saying, "Damn it, Bobby."
No,
that's good.
That's good.
Yeah.
I like the fact that Junior has this relationship with all the media members and stuff too, and likes to give them a hard time and stuff.
Yeah, that was good.
I love his relationship with Gluck, and that's great. Speaking of Jeff, that's what I wanted to mention earlier. Okay, going back to Case Kane. If you don't listen to Jeff Gluck's podcast, listen to his How I Got Here with, who the heck is it, James? I can't think of her name right now.
Oh yeah,
the sprint car driver. I'm gonna pull it up right now.
I can look. Yep, I can look it up too. I don't have it on me.
Untitled Jeff Gluck podcast. Oh man, I'm McKenna Hassey. Hayes. I don't know how you say her last name. Anyway, she talks about how she basically went from not knowing anything about racing and a chance meeting with Case Kane that got her to become a sprint car driver. It's excellent. Jeff tweeted out that it was going to be the best one he's ever done. I kind of thought that there's been some really good ones in the past, so I wasn't sure it was going to compete.
Good ones. Yeah.
This was the best one. And if you don't listen to Gluck's podcast, at least just listen to How I Got Here, because they're great. I love the 12 questions too. I mean, I pretty much like Jeff's podcast, period. So
yeah, Jeff's podcast is where I get my majority of Jeff.
Yeah, that's
he does
he's the one racing podcast I listen to all of them every week as much as I can. So, and if I fall behind, I catch up. So, check him out for sure. So let's talk about the IndyCar race real quick, James. Heck of a crash at the IndyCar race at Pocono, heading into turn 1. First of all, they have a wreck on the first lap before they even take the green flag. They get back to green, and on the first lap back to green, Ryan Hunter-Reay, Robert Wickens get together. Wickens climbs up on top of Hunter-Reay's car, hits the fence, goes pretty much through the fence, spins it around. Bunch of injuries to Wickens. Thank goodness he's alive, because it was pretty scary. I didn't watch it live, but when I did watch it, I didn't know what had happened yet, and so it was one of those broadcasts you watch, and you could tell everybody was really concerned, and I don't know, it was scary. What's your take on it, I guess? Anything?
It's the scariest wreck I've seen in quite a while. I'll say that. It was
Dan Weldon-esque, that's for sure. I mean,
yeah, that one was bad. Dan Weldon's was probably the worst. Pocono, gosh, who was the driver who passed away at Pocono a couple years ago? Remember when?
Oh yeah, God, I don't want to say a name because I'm going to say the wrong name.
Yeah. Anyway, but Pocono seems to be. Yeah.
Pocono is just a crazy track. Period. It's just the angle of the turns. Everything about that track just lends itself to weird accidents.
So much speed, and it tightens up real quick.
Yeah,
and that's what happened there. And
try and go side by side on the first green flag lap in the tunnel turn is just nuts.
Yeah.
But thank goodness Robert Wickens is okay. I mean,
sounds like he's going to be okay. He's got a lot of work to do, but yeah.
Let's, here's something, we've made a ton of safety advancements in our sport. The safer barriers, the IndyCar, they've got the different pods and stuff. They call it, I forget what the heck they called it during the broadcast, but there's a certain name for the pod that is designed to stay together, unlike the way they used to break apart and legs would be exposed and things like that. We've made all these advancements to the cars, the tracks, the walls, and we've made advancements to the fences and the fact that they're stronger and they keep cars in the track, but they just disintegrate cars, and I don't know what the answer is. I hope that it's something as simple. I mean, if you really get down to it and you think about it, the safer barrier is like the most simple thing. Like we were putting styrofoam on walls for years. Just nobody thought to put a piece of metal in front of the styrofoam and put the styrofoam between the metal and the wall. Like, it's such a simple design that works so well. I just hope that there's a solution like that for fences that is just as easy, and we all go, oh, duh, why didn't we do that before? But fences are scary, man. The cars get in them, and they just don't. It's never good.
Yeah,
Nothing. Sorry.
No, I mean, I just don't have an answer. You've said it. I mean, you said it. I don't have an answer for, it's just we don't see it very often anymore, I guess, is where I'm coming from. And so when you do, it's more shocking.
Right. The other thing I want to say to IndyCar is I don't watch IndyCar a ton. I do watch several races a year, and I went to my first one this year. But I'm not like diehard IndyCar like I am with NASCAR. But IndyCar needs to take some advice from Formula One this year. I know that it's not cool to have a halo. It's an open air cockpit, blah, 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 blah. And they were looking at windshields for the Indy cars, and they haven't done that, and I don't know where that ended up. But it's time to put a freaking roll bar on the top of these things. We do not – if Wickens would have went in head first and hit that pole with his head, it would have been it. And not only that, but if you watch the video of his car flying over Ryan Hunter-Reay's, it takes the camera off of Ryan Hunter-Reay's car. If it was a foot lower, it would have hit Ryan Hunter-Reay right in the head. It is time for IndyCar to do a little bit more to protect these drivers, and if the drivers don't like it, tough. Period.
Right. Yep.
We don't need to. As a fan of any sport, it's not good to be talking about somebody killed in another series. It sucks every time it happens in a sprint car, and it sucks any time it happens anywhere. And we need these guys to be safe as much as possible. And if it means a little bit reduced visibility because you can't see through the center of your windshield, tough. Man up. Learn how to drive with it and put a halo on the thing.
Exactly.
So there, my soapbox was for IndyCar this week.
That's good. We had a couple soapboxes this week, which was great.
Couple.
I always enjoyed those.
Anything else, James? Yes. I mean, we're an hour and a half into this almost. Anything else?
Gosh, yeah. I don't think we can go any longer, can we?
I don't think so.
I'm sure there's probably something we forgot.
My wife's probably going, is he done yet?
Yeah. I saw Jeff Burton put a story out that said more short tracks aren't the answer. So if anybody wants to go read that.
Interesting.
I haven't read it yet, but I saw the tweet. So I'm already mad at Jeff Burton. So I got that going on.
I saw something pop up that was interesting to me too. I don't know what it was. Oh, the dirt track. They're putting the dirt track in at Indy. It's getting close. They got fences up and walls.
That's awesome. I love that.
All right, James, if they want to find you during the week on Twitter, how can they find you?
At James Cush on Twitter.
If you want to follow me and see who I'm arguing with in the NASCAR community this week, you can follow me at TSuperspeedway on Twitter. You can find the podcast on Facebook at facebook.com/thesuperspeedway. You can find our website at www.thesuperspeedway.com. You'll find the podcast there, show notes, links about all the stuff we talked about today is in there, and all kinds of coverage and stuff from a few races this year, most recently Michigan a couple weeks ago for the Cup Series and the Truck Series. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, and SoundCloud. We'd love it if you become a patron and help support what we're doing. Visit patreon.com/thesuperspeedway. Any closing thoughts, James, before we head on out of here?
No, I'm I was well rested coming in, and it's gone.
Yeah.
So I'm back, and I'm back in the grind after this one.
I think Skype's the same way because I think there's a really big delay between us right now. It's
very good. Well, I think it's had enough. Yeah.
I think so. So with that note, no Cup race this weekend. We go to Darlington next weekend for one of the greatest races of the year with throwback schemes and all that stuff. But this weekend we got road course racing in both Xfinity and Truck, so check those out. We'll be back next week to talk about those and talk about whatever other news breaks. Hopefully we get some shoes dropping as far as the silly season. But we'll be here to talk about it. Until then, let's go racing.